What what are you wearing?
What am I
Are
wearing?
you not seeing the movie Elf?
Is that Oh, Elf. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's my hat.
So this is your Will Ferrell moment.
This is my Will Ferrell moment every year. Wear it at least once.
Got it. Well,
Chip,
I'm the size of an actual elf, so perhaps I should have one of those.
Do you want to know the details of that situation?
Definitely.
yes,
We can arrange that for
Um,
you, Chip.
what's that again?
Okay, Microsoft, do you want me to go?
Yes,
I'm gonna
yes.
tell you? Okay. So when we talked about it initially, I hadn't even looked into it yet, so I didn't have much info for you. After that call, I did look into it, but that's 3 weeks ago now. Microsoft still has no response for me. Interestingly enough, I'm being passed around and around and around. I've had 2 remote sessions with them to go over the logs and look at exactly the same information that I provided in the original ticket and still being passed around. So there is no real response to it, but I did talk to Ben about this on Discord right after our call, after I looked into it. And my theory is that it is a user's mobile device that they were using a personal VPN on. But from the logs, I told you guys that all of the attempts were an IP address that Microsoft is stating is in the Netherlands. We looked up the IP, it's showing some other things, but the interesting thing in the logs is all of the failures. So the ones where the conditional access policy was applied successfully. So a login failure was logged because the cap was applied. They show the original IP address that Microsoft mapped to the Netherlands, but they also show a second IP address seen by resource, and that IP address is in Canada. So you would think that those are the ones that snuck through because Entra ID or Azure or whatever resource, whatever's seeing this IP address in Canada says, oh, I'm not going to apply this conditional access policy because I see an alternate IP address here and it passes. But those are the ones where the cap applied and blocked the login, whereas the 2 single successes in the location of the details only show the Netherlands IP address. So again, still taking that up with Microsoft. They don't have an answer for me yet. The IP address is seen by resource, I think is related to the new Microsoft CAE stuff, the continuous access evaluation stuff that's in preview. But we've only got P1s on there, so we don't have any risk-based policies in place. But yeah, that's my theory, is that it was probably somebody's mobile device. So the mobile app is already authenticated. And it slipped through in that way because it was flipping back and forth between Canada and Netherlands IP, possibly because they had a personal VPN on it. What do you think? That's my theory.
So, you're describing like almost a jitter effect where it's bouncing back and forth between the different IP addresses. It's oddly and weirdly related to an article Ben sent me this morning around an MFA vulnerability that Microsoft supposedly repaired in October that was discovered in June, where you could basically just MFA bomb using automation so fast that Microsoft would just basically shrug its shoulders, give up, and let you go in. And the actual user of the account was never even getting an SMS or an MFA pop up on their phone.
Maybe.
I don't know why I have a sense that these things are related, other than there seems to be a similar kind of behavior in terms of almost a system overflow, overload that's allowing this strange behavior to occur.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to hear what Microsoft has to say, but I have a feeling they're not going to say much.
Well, just tell them that you're expecting $100,000, bug bounty award for discovering this, and
Well, and also my money back because your caps didn't apply how they should have.
yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, that's all I have for you. But when we all looked it up that time, remember that IP address when you're looking on co or whatever you guys check, and what is my IP address.com, etc., it was showing as nothing to hide. It was showing as a malicious IP, and recently when I checked it, it was showing as a Tor exit node. So
Yeah.
the IP
Or exit
address
node, yep.
obviously, yeah, the IP address obviously is coming from
Suspicious.
technology. Yeah, but it is possible that that was a user with a personal VPN hiding, they do that, right? And this is only added into,
Well,
I'm
they're
assuming,
and perhaps using the Tor network. They may have been
yeah,
using Tor, a Tor client for doing some other kind of browsing they wanted to do on their phone. They left it on while they were connecting, or
yeah,
while one of the applications installed on the phone was connecting and retrieving data.
yeah, trying to refresh their email and they forgot to turn it off. That's my theory. We'll see. We'll see. That's
It's a
it.
good one.
That's
Well, thanks for the
exciting.
update, Tina.
Always something fun here, Chip. It's interesting about you mentioned about the Microsoft logs. I think it was you remember that incident, Chip, about a year ago we were covering, and Microsoft finally said, oh, we're going to allow logs. It was gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but you and I covered this a lot.
Oh, this is when Microsoft decided to add additional logging for free Azure AD.
Yep.
Yeah.
And under E5. Remember, it was like and they never made the announcement, if you recall.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Well, it was Senator Ron Johnson from, where's he from? Is he like North Dakota or something? He's the one that jumped up and down and said that they have to stop with the paywall business. And they responded to that by saying, okay, we're going to extend more security features and more logging down to free Azure AD Business Basic
yep.
customers. And I've never seen follow up on that, but they said they were going to do it.
It was, remember, we covered, it was the storm incident.
Yep.
The 4 numbers, storm plus 4 numbers, the Chinese hack into Microsoft. And then, yeah. So anyway, Tina, I'm not surprised, basically, is I think what we're all.
Yeah. Yeah,
Look,
I'm not surprised.
you guys know I'm not shy about bashing Microsoft. At the same
Me
time,
either.
I have some sympathy for, for what it's like for them to try and wrangle the bear of their code and all the backward compatibility it has to have and the legacy systems that it has to work with. Like it is not an easy process. Honestly, it's not an easy process for us to stay on top of all this stuff. Google Workspace is a much, much newer product that doesn't have a lot of the legacy baggage. I think that's why many people in the security industry feel it's inherently more secure. But it's not easy what Microsoft is attempting to do. I mean, they couldn't do what a purely security-minded development organization would when they built their SaaS apps, which is we're going to start from scratch and blow the whole damn thing up and do it a completely different way. Like they just, the business rules in the sense of how you go to market and what people are actually going to buy just wouldn't permit them to do that. So they're still carrying around the baggage of, of Windows 95, and it's not an easy thing to get away from.
Yeah, and if you think, go ahead, Tina, please.
I was just going to ask about the Unify option that's coming up soon that you guys talked about, where you can map personal devices and possibly mobile devices. Was mobile devices included in there? Is that something that would be, and how are you doing that? That might not be for today's call.
Well, Adam just popped on screen knowing that I would probably say, I wonder if Adam's here. So
Yeah.
Adam, and if anybody needs an introduction, Adam directs all of our work on the MSP tools side. He runs our engineering division there. So he's rather authoritative on this topic.
Yeah, I was part of the Unify team. So the short answer is that mobile devices are coming soon. That's product manager speaks for, I'm not giving you a date, but it is definitely high on my list. And right after we get Microsoft devices integrated into Unify, mobile will be there shortly thereafter. So that'll be a big help. And then from there, the next thing is that personal devices thing. We haven't really quite settled in on the methodology and how we're going to support that, whether it'll be a Unify feature or whether it'll actually end up being part of the IOC functionality that we've been working on, as well as our power filters modules. So that still needs to be kind of shaken out a little bit, but mobile's on its way for sure.
Yeah. So
Well,
more succinctly, out of mobile devices that are joined via Entra and managed under Intune is pretty close. That's under active development
Yes.
and not far away.
Correct.
so they would have to be enrolled or joined to be able to.
Registered
Yeah.
or enrolled, I think, is the actual terminology,
Thank
which
you.
can happen in a lot of different ways. Once we've got that underway, then the next step is figuring out how we deal with the non-managed devices. And that's going to take some interesting puzzle solving to figure that part out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. All right, Chip, I'll share off the screen. I didn't know if Leron or Amanda had anything today, so I kind of left this blank. If I'm not sure, do we have anything from Dev? Just so I know.
Leron is at a conference, same conference that Jim is at, so he's definitely not joining us. I don't think Amanda had anything
So
new.
there was, yeah, no updates from us this week.
Okay, Amanda, no worries. All right, Chip. So I have you in charge with Chip with Jim out on wins of the week. So starting it off with you, Chip, and or Ben, and then anybody else. Anything for you?
Yeah, let's throw it out first to the to the attendees in general, because my favorite wins of the week are when one of our partners has a win that they can share, or at least an interesting story that falls into how either our tool or some other security tool helped them save a customer from potential disaster. So I don't see any of the usual suspects, Ann or Enrique or Andy, jumping right in. But if anyone else has got something that they can share, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Chip, that's why I was going to you first, because sometimes I had to warm up the crowd. So if you had,
I'm trying, Andrew, but I think everyone's a little frozen.
Well, if my microphone's working here in Zoom, I've got a story.
Sam, you're on.
Please do.
Awesome, cool. So it's just Teams that hates me today. So yeah, yesterday we had a respond rule fire for, new device, successful login, and email rules. And it was a user getting set up on a new device actually at the company. But the email rule that did the triggering, we were able to tell our customer about, and it was the user doing user things. Instead of forwarding a single email to someone who needed it, they forwarded all emails from this person to another person in the company. So it was one of those, hey, we caught this event, we double checked it and stuff, got them logged back in, but then it was, that rule should not be there. So just kind of a funny story that one of our rules helped us find a different problem where users were just being users.
So Sam, was that an opportunity to do a little user education about the, sort of the danger of them throwing that blanket rule out there? And
yeah. No, the our technical contact at the client was able to get with them and be like, look, don't set up email rules like that. That's not how that should go. But they were very thankful that we caught that and let them know about it in such a timely fashion.
That's definitely a win.
That's awesome. It's interesting, Chip, how that really is like security awareness. Your tool can turn into security awareness training.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, a higher percentage of respond rules that trigger are that situation where it's not an actual ongoing compromise, and they are ways of helping the customer be aware of what you're doing for them with your security stack, which leads into the obvious conversation of, well, while we're at it, let's talk about policy and compliance and why this violates in this particular case, a data loss prevention rule. You don't just forward everything to some other address, especially if Sam didn't tell us whether that was an external or not, but especially if it
It
were
was
an
internal,
external address.
but it was still,
Yeah,
hey,
internal.
every single email from blank, you're then just forwarding on to this other person also in the company.
Yeah.
Not the use case.
Yeah, but Chip, you bring up a really good point. Sam, did you guys get a chance to talk about policies with them? Are they sophisticated enough where they want to have policy in place, and are they open to that? Because obviously this is, where governance comes in and kind of a vCISO type approach.
Yeah, so this is one of those ones that the ticket will then go to our solutions engineer, and when he does his monthly calls, it'll be one of the things. He'll have a note there that he can discuss that with them.
Got it. Okay. Very cool.
Rich
I'm gonna
just,
add-
just
Oh.
dropped something in there that looks interesting too. Rich, do you want to share some details on that?
Yeah, one of our employees, he got email on his phone and he was busy kind of trying to get something done. And it was from somebody he knew that he does business with. And apparently it was a corrupted document. And it must have been the other guy's machine must have been compromised. It was a guy that we knew that we do business with. So within a couple of minutes, the SAS detected the bad actor access from Axios or what other things it was tripping on. And yeah, as far as we know, the compromise was inside the document, whatever it was. Now, what we noticed
Andrew.
was when we weren't in the portal to kind of clean up shop, it looked like there was a software token added. And the problem is we don't know if that was there before or not. So we decided just to remove it. We just didn't know if that was a possible, like an end around mechanism that an actor might use if they can get in there to make a token. But that one I'm not totally sure about, but it was in there and we ended up removing it. Very few people use the software token as a method. And our guy already had his SMS and mobile and Microsoft Authenticator all plugged in there. So there was no reason for him to have a software authentication token. So anyway, they weren't in there long enough to do any damage, but it was a concern.
It's great to hear that that the rule picked it up very quickly, and that Axios rule is one I think Ben has shared with the community via Discord. Ben really developed that rule, I think, from his observations. We use it extensively on the with the MSA team, the managed SaaS side. So that's good to hear that it was picked up. Rich, did I hear you say at the beginning that this was started on a mobile device? Your team member clicked on it on a mobile device?
Yeah, he gets, he's a cable guy, right? He's a manager, so he's busy, and he may have been heading to his car or driving or whatever. And so he basically looked down on his phone and processed it on his phone, using Microsoft's, maybe an app on his phone for,
So did he have
Office.
Word installed on his phone also?
I don't think he has Word on his phone.
That's interesting. Because Andrew, this sounds
a
suspiciously like the attack that we talked about, I think last week, that you brought up, with the with the broken Word doc that has to be fixed, opens up and sends you to the login page. It sounds just like that, and this guy actually pulled it off with his mobile. Fascinating.
Yeah, I never saw the file, and my boss was not wanting to kind of process it too much because he didn't know what was inside the thing. So
Yeah, I wouldn't
we
click
just
on it again.
decided to alert we alerted the sender that something must have been wrong with their system because they were sending out corrupted documents. And then that conference you were talking about the Word doc corruption was in the back of my mind where we're looking at it, but I think it was a PDF file or something like that. I don't think it was a Word document.
Oh, okay.
Though I didn't actually hear what the document was. So
Interesting.
but I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that tool that Ben shared with everybody because it did stop it pretty fast and it gave us quick access to everything. So, and I appreciate the help with that.
Yeah, that's great. And for those of you who aren't following chat, Ben specifically called out Zach from Solutions Granted, who apparently was a very effective collaborator on developing that rule and doing the analysis to get there. So thanks, Zach, if you're on and listening.
All right, I do have a question though. Is it possible that a bad actor could inject a software token?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the classic attacker in the middle software token hijack. I mean, that can occur across any SaaS application because there is an authorization token that's riding along with your session, no matter what. And it has been demonstrated that a semi-permanent or a static software token that's associated with a mobile application can get harvested and used to authenticate a session. So that's definitely possible.
All right.
Why do you ask though? Any particular reason? Rich?
I think Rich had said that they suspected that there was a software token used, an authorization token used for the attacker to gain access, and they hadn't seen that prior.
Okay. Interesting. Good stuff. Others? Oh, there's Enrique. He's here now, Chip.
Oh, he was here all along. He's just focused so much on something. I think he's on the phone. You know, he's not in his camper. He's back in his office, so he's actually working.
Okay.
I want to comment on what you guys just talked about. It's not like it's a huge win. And it's the reason why I love your software and you guys. But just all of the data that we do get from SaaS alerts that do help us talk about these things with clients. So when a user does set up an email rule, we see the IP address, it looks legit, we know it's legit, but we still follow up and just say, hey, this is something we're monitoring, because it's usually the first indication of compromise. After credentials have been compromised, they set up a rule. So we just want to confirm that this was you, and they know that we're watching, and they love that. MFA registrations or deletions, or MFA disabled or enabled, download thresholds that we have in place where we're watching if somebody downloads a certain amount of files outside of SharePoint Teams. It's just something that we follow up on. If we see anonymous sharing or a guest account that is downloading files, we get an alert and we follow up with clients on that. And they love it because they know we're watching. So we're showing our value. And the other tools that I looked at when I found SaaS alerts weren't doing that. They were looking at external threat, and maybe they were doing a fabulous job of external threat and taking that bulk of the work off of us, which is amazing if you need to check that box and you need to have that protection in place. But SaaS alerts gave me so much and gives me so much insight into what the users are doing, and that helps me communicate with the clients, talk about the risks, talk about those guest accounts, talk about cleaning them up, talking about anonymous sharing, talking about setting up rules, and everything that we're watching for and everything they should be thinking about. So I feel like that is like the most ginormous win ever. What do you think?
Wow, that's a great testimonial, Tina. Amy, did you hear all that? You can clip this right off the recording and turn Tina into a impromptu testimonial?
Amy
Please
was
no.
monitoring the old link to see if anybody showed up there, but we'll be sure and let her know.
Yeah.
I just got brave to come on here, so don't do that to me.
We would never
right.
do that without getting explicit permission, Tina. You have editing rights. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Chip,
I love it.
I'm going to
Thank
double
you,
down.
guys.
Yeah, Tina, great stuff. I'm going to double down what I said earlier that, if I were in your shoes, I would be really using these as policy conversations, right? Leading into, hey, in your company, yes, thanks so much, Tina, for catching that. So, hey, in your company, we just had this MFA issue or caught this forwarding rule or whatever it may be. Is there a policy in the company about this?
Yeah.
And that leads right into, you leading governance discussions with them and really being at the table of leadership.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely agree. It helps you gradually build up a policy book for each individual client and ones that can be used across many others. I mean, I remember that part of my security journey very specifically in the early aughts when policy started becoming a thing, and I was honestly frozen about it because I'm like, I don't really, what do you mean write a policy? This is how we behave. Like this is how we expect it. And then policy leads into, well, if you have a policy, how do you enforce the policy? And a lot of times, our first go at that was a big spreadsheet of all our policies, and somebody was responsible to audit those on a quarterly basis. Not every single one, but go and hit one user with this one and one user with that one and just run an audit. And from that thinking leads to a product like this, where you're like, well, we need to automate this stuff so that it can be observed in real time. And that becomes your audit check. So I would definitely encourage anyone to use those kinds of events to prove your worth to your customer and give them that follow-up, which is what Tina was just expressing. It's the show me moment. This is what we're doing. Makes you sticky as an MSP. Honestly, our original motto was protect and monetize. So gives you an opportunity to jack your pricing a little bit every year as you're showing your value, and improve their overall security posture. It's like a triple win.
Yeah. It's good to see Eric mentioned he uses this as an example as well to develop policies if they don't have them in place. I think the other thing it does too, Chip, if you just like pull out, let's just pull MFA as an example, because that was mentioned. Also, I think it goes back to, what is and Eric, I know, is really in tune with this, your MSAs, your legal agreements, like who's responsible for that in the legal agreements. Those historically were very nebulous. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is patching, in my excerpt, Chip, because a lot of MSAs out there still say, we patch your systems, and they're very vague. And that's very dangerous in the era we live today. And I'll explain why, type of thing. So yeah, two very different things, patching versus vulnerability management. So, all right, others, good stuff. Anyone else? Well, Chip.
So if we have just a couple minutes before you jump in, Andrew, I do want to put Ben on the spot, and just maybe, Ben, you can give us a recap of what's going on the MSA side that you're seeing. Anything new?
I had him on the docket because it was funny. He mentioned the Axios thing, that's been mentioned. So yeah, Ben, take it away.
Cool. All right. I'm going to share my screen for a second because I want to point out something that I was talking, I believe, to Rich about on Discord about authentication failures. And he was, we were kind of wondering, why we're monitoring that in in the Axios rule that we have set up. And I want to point something out to you guys that we see these all the time. They're low priority, but the authentication failure doesn't mean necessarily it was a login was blocked or they had a bad username and password. A lot of the times it's a natural flow of the authentication. So if you look really closely here at this text, basically it's Microsoft saying this is expected. This is Microsoft saying, do you want to stay signed in? And so when we see that Axios attack, a lot of the time this is the only event that we see. They're very clever about hiding the OAuth, the authentication successful. And so typically this is the only message that we get, and it's usually comes along with that Axios user agent. So I wanted to point out, I know the rule is definitely on Discord, but if you are not on Discord and you want to configure that yourself, this is basically it. It's very effective. And one of the things that we do monitor is that authentication successful. With this particular rule, we don't play around. This is an immediate count block. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine and just do an alert only. I'm going to block the account, find out what the person clicked on that led them to ending up at this site. Axios is used for other software. I think Langar uses it, and that's why we added a couple of these Office Home and Unknown that's typically accompanied with this particular attack. There's also some obvious signs. The data centers that we typically notice are more in I think it's Arizona, and I think it's like Global Internet Solutions or something like that. So if you ever do see those, that you could also add that in here, but I kind of like to leave it as flexible as possible. I know eventually they're going to move data centers. I'm surprised they haven't, but we still see that even as early as I think we found one that happened yesterday, one or two. So we see them every week. And this is the primary rule that we use to detect that. So if you don't have this set up, do yourself a favor, just throw it together. Highly unlikely that it'll have false triggers. If it does, it's most likely because you're probably running a software. I think there's another one. It's like a lead generation software, but you'll see that in the description details, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly that it's not malicious and make adjustments to this rule. But yeah, this is uh, like Chip said, Zach over at Solutions Granted, they started noticing this activity with a particular Axios agent. I just pretty much just said every Axios, I don't care what version number they're running, because their versions have changed over time. I think as they've made improvements to the software, their token theft software. So I kind of just said, hey, you know what? As long as you keep using this agent and you keep coming from this data center and using this these unknowns and Office Home, I'm going to go ahead and alert on that. But just wanted to mostly point out the reason for this authentication failure. If you're looking at it going, well, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that's there. That's why. Yeah.
Anybody have those? I mean, obviously, I think Rich spoke about it already, but anybody else have this fire that you know about?
Well, if you don't, it's a very easy one to fly under the radar. If that was the only indicator, that event, the authentication failure, you would not see it because that is a low priority. So this basically takes and sifts through all those low priority, low severity events and pulls out the one or two that actually matter that you should pay attention to. So as you see, you do get user agent information when this happens, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the user agent. We're looking at the additional description, and those two things match up. We're taking action immediately. So it's ongoing and it doesn't seem to stop. And honestly, I'm surprised the data center is still allowing it. Either they don't know about it or they don't care.
It might be a paying client, Ben. So maybe, no, I'm kidding.
I mean, that's kind of my go-to was, I mean, as long as their check clears, it doesn't really matter. But it is something that, like I said, we're seeing weekly. I'm not even surprised when I see it anymore.
So Andy,
Ben, when did it start? Any data correlation on when this began to become a thing?
It was probably, I think, like a September, August, I believe. It was one of the very first rules that when MSA started that we put in every environment. And by that time it was pretty reliable.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just to make the point, and Andrew, you've made this point many times, that innovation on the attacking side continues every day. It's evolving. Because this is something that we didn't see a year ago, and it wasn't a 2023 thing; it's a 2024 thing. Just like the attack in the middle authorization token hijack wasn't a 2022 thing that started bubbling up in 2023 and became the thing for 2024. So, it continues to evolve and we all have to stay on our toes.
And it looks like, Chip, to answer your question, it looks like the article, one of the first articles that was posted about it was back in July. So yeah, it's not, a lot of people think it's Nginx, but it's not. It's a completely different software. So that really just should open your eyes to say, just because you think I can detect Nginx or I can do this or that, there's multiple software out there that we don't have any sort of visibility on. But this is one of the signs we can use to detect it.
Good stuff, Ben.
Yeah. And by the way, Chip, if you take a look at what Rich just said, why am I getting so many capture challenges? That it was like Turnstile, I think, is the capture challenge that you see them using a lot, which is a Cloudflare. It's basically, Rich, again, like they're allowing it almost like, for lack of a better word, almost like Chip, what's the word I want to use? it's almost to complete the authentication of the attack, right? It's
So Rich, I want to clarify, are you talking about when you're specifically logging into SAS alerts?
oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm logging back into a window, and some days I have these like one or two of these capture challenges, and I'm getting the then I'll get the text, the SMS text. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't have a specific why, because Cloudflare is our, one of our protections is our WAF that sits in front of SAS alerts, and it's also our content delivery network. So I know from my personal experience that when I'm using my VPN and I'm connecting to SAS alerts, I get a CAPTCHA, prove you're human every single time. When I'm coming straight in with just my standard Starlink connection, I don't. So your experience may vary. I think some of that can also be browser dependent, and there's lots of different reasons that they'll do it. That actually isn't being controlled by us directly. Unlike Tina's opening question, that we don't control this one. That's Cloudflare doing what they're doing. But for some reason, Rich, they think you're suspicious.
Uh-oh.
You're not logging in from the Netherlands, right, Tina?
Yeah.
That's sorry about that. That's how, Rich. That's how I took it. Was his question, Chip? Was all of the ways in which threat actors are using turnstile and CAPTCHAs to complete the man-in-the-middle attacks.
Yep.
So good. Okay. Let me share out my screen. This is really interesting. So I'm just going to ask, you can put a yes or no into, oh, well, before I do that, I want to share, that was the Axios thing with, so I did want to share, speaking of policies, and this is the time of year for phishing, the holidays. Chip, I wanted to share this one because this was really good, I thought.
I got one of these this exact one.
Isn't this fabulous? I mean, if you think about like take out, thank goodness we all have some, vernacular in this area, right? And, most, knock on wood, all of us would go, whoa, wait a minute. But for your lay person and your customers, what percent do you think would go and go, oh, I got a package coming, maybe and just do something? So think about how they set this up. They set it up brilliantly, by the way. If you're on a computer, hey, no problem. I'll just take my mobile and scan it. And if I'm on my mobile, I can just click the link. Either way, they've set it up really well to, and also it's like, the way they said it is, in other words, in order to get, details are required. So, again, I just wanted to point this out. Anybody this time of year, just maybe yes or no in chat, doing stuff around security awareness for holiday type phishing, because this is prime, which by the way then leads into prime phishing for benefits. So these next 2 months, good for you, Tina. These next 2 months are going to ratchet up with those types of phishing campaigns. So just be prepared for those and, get ahead of it with your customers.
Yeah, and there's the USPS one out there. I don't know if people have seen that. We've talked about that before, Andrew. It's just like this DHL. It's an SMS you get from somebody posing as the U.S. Post Office, telling you that they can't deliver a package because they need more information, with a link to click, of course. It's not as well crafted as this because it's pretty easy for, I think, any of us certainly to spot that the URLs are a little off. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But obviously a lot of people still fall for this stuff. Probably in the thousands per week are falling for this. Maybe a million. I don't know.
So this one's a little, I wanted to go over this. So just again, yay or nay in chat, Chip, could you just take a look? Have you followed this particular vulnerability? Are you guys aware of the Clio vulnerability? It's an important one. It's hit a lot of MSPs customers. So if you have clients that do any type of logistics, think, warehousing, trucking, manufacturing, et cetera, this is a very popular file transfer protocol software and sits in manufacturing and ERP or MRP systems. So what's the verdict? Yes, you nailed it, Ben. The patch did not work. And this is really one that I want to bring up because Eric Monroe, if he's still on, are you, Eric?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Eric, what did you mean? You said patch management versus vulnerability because it leads into this. I do want to ask you what you meant about that.
Yeah, it was about a year ago. We were trying to figure out that exact question and how to describe it to our clients. And we came up with, patch management is we're going to monitor your workstation and server OSs and make sure that they have all the patch and security and update patches to that. But when it comes down to third-party applications and policies that manage the vulnerability of any type of known exploits, that wasn't included.
Okay. We can talk about more of that offline, but I just wanted to ask you what you meant by that because so let me just kind of give you guys a background of this and why, I brought many moons ago, well, it's not many moons ago now, but I did bring a vulnerability management solution to market from literally no code all the way through. This isn't a publicity thing about me, but what I did want to bring up is most MSPs I speak with on the margin, they focus on vulnerabilities, Eric, and you kind of just said it. It's around the core, Windows and Mac systems, right? And this is where, MSPs can find themselves in a weird position, which again, I always talk about going back to what does your MSA say? How long ago is it updated? And how vague is it? Vague is not good. If vague is we patch your systems, that's dangerous. Because in the court of law, an attorney who knows nothing about technology is going to go, you say you patch their systems. It doesn't say you only patch Windows. It doesn't always say you patch servers and workstations. And in this case, this is one that per what Ben said was lo and behold, there was a vulnerability found in their suite of products used by many of the MSP's customers, by the way, in these fields, right? So it talks about, right, it does, EDI, API, it supports these integrations in these manufacturing and logistics organizations, very popular. And there's different levels, right? So there's single node, multi-node, and then enterprise grade, right? They do the same thing, but good, better, best based on size, complexity, et cetera. So lo and behold, Clio put out, now I'm going to go backwards a little bit. So they found this vulnerability back in October. They put out a patch, which was 5.8.0.2.1. Interestingly, Huntress and some other security research firms started seeing repeatedly the MSP's clients getting hit with companies running Clio. And they looked, and lo and behold, they checked the version, and the version was 5.0.0.2.1. So they reverse engineered and found out that this particular version, which was the latest version and the patch version chip, was not working correctly. I'm not laughing at it. So, and then lo and behold, the spokesperson of Clio said, "Oh yeah, by the way, they're correct. It is vulnerable still." Now, what I found interesting was this was up until 2 days ago that they said, "Hey, if you're running, a version of Clio, make sure you update it to this version." Well, that's the version that's still vulnerable. And then lo and behold, just 14 hours ago, and this is real, why I want Chip, your take on this as a software manufacturer. This one just kind of like, I'm still scratching my head, but I want your thoughts. This plays into all of you out there. I want you to think about this in terms of, how you work with your customers, because this is a real situation that MSPs are finding themselves in. So 14 hours ago, Chip, they say, oh, by the way, you need to upgrade to this one. Please visit this place to get the vulnerability. Now, this is why I find this interesting. I clicked this, and instead of being able to download the patch quickly, and as an MSP, right, I want to, Eric, if you had a bunch of clients, wouldn't you want the patch and be able to deploy it and validate it across your customer base quickly, correct?
Oh, we would, but we also make our clients have an active support for any of their line of business apps before we support it.
Okay, but pretend you did. My point is, you'd want access to that and distribute it in a scripted fashion, get it out quickly in mass, correct?
Correct.
Right. Well, guess what they do? They put it behind a paywall. So
is it a paywall or just an authentication wall?
Well, I'm air quoting a paywall, right, Chip? But here's the point I'm trying to make as an MSP that I want you to think about, as Eric just said, hey, what about these third-party apps that are critical for line of business that are, their revenue is impacted by this, right? Because they can't get stuff out the door, et cetera, et cetera. Well, again, in your MSAs, right, Eric, about who supports what, who's responsible for what, this is where you got to get very detailed these days because of the age we live in, Chip, of threat actors. Because if and lo and behold, your MSA says we patch your systems, well, number one, as Eric said, well, wait a minute, this is third party. Somebody else should be doing this. Does it say that in your MSA? And lastly, if you are supporting these, what do you do in this situation? Especially if you have a bunch of, you're in a vertical with manufacturing and a bunch of them use it. Well, now I got to wait for them to all get it. So what do you think of this, Chip, though? Like putting the patch behind.
I mean, it seems like a very clunky way to get an urgent patch out for a security vulnerability to your customers.
Yeah.
And you would think that they would make this available so that it could be easily downloaded, scripted for install, using RMMs or whatever else. The only reason I can think of to do this is because they're concerned that by releasing the patch, hackers are going to grab it quickly if they don't put it behind some kind of an authentication wall, reverse engineer it and effectively and run around the patch again, which is probably what happened on the intermediate side. That's certainly one explanation.
It is, but it's again, no disrespect, but it's a crazy one if that's their thought, right? Because it's actively exploited in the previous version. Andy, what do you got?
I was going to say for this, it makes it incredibly difficult, even for an enterprise that isn't using an MSP, to update all of their warehouses that they're in logistics, all their trucking depots, all the billing that they have to do. I'm sure that they have multiple points where this software's present. And what is a reasonable response time when they do this to get them compliant? I mean, that we go back to the court situation. How you got to lay this out. If the vendor makes it difficult to deploy, then it's going to take longer and it will cost more, right?
And someone said it in there, but it's a good point, Andy. But as MSPs, this is where we need to do our due diligence.
Absolutely. But I'm saying for something like this, whether or not it's an enterprise is going to be struggling with this as well.
Yeah. No. Well said. I love what Ben put in there about CrowdStrike, right? Because as MSPs, right, we're the deliverer of these tools a lot of time. Not in this one, probably a third party, but it is a great point that Ben brought up. A client doesn't care. You baked in CrowdStrike. It's your problem, right?
Yeah.
You got to go reboot all the machines. Not my problem.
At least we didn't bake this one in.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben's other point is an interesting one. As a threat actor, if this is a threat actor that's really, really knowledgeable about Clio and wants to continue to be a nuisance, they could actually pose as the provider of the solution and yet be effectively another backdoor or hack right directly into the system. Indra, I want to know what your results were when you clicked on the new to Clio sign up button and you registered your information there.
I didn't do that yet, but it's very funny and ironic of what you just said. You said something to the degree, what if a threat actor, right, is really focused in on this? Right, Chip? Okay.
Yeah, which they obviously are.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
Hold that thought, because you just literally, without seeing the last two slides, literally just really clairvoyantly discussed it. So I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, a very similar genre of software was attacked, for lack of a better word, right? Compromised. Did you guys hear about the Blue Yonder? And now this is big companies use this. We're talking the Starbucks of the world use this for logistics management. The termite gang, as they go, Chip, exfiltrated, compromised, I don't know how many systems, but this was almost like a snowflake type thing, right? Lots of big companies exfiltrated close to 1 terabyte worth of really important documents as well. They're just getting back up and running. So, but again, think logistics, warehousing, supply chain is the theme, right? Well, let's go back now and look at the Clio vulnerability. Well, guess who is doing all the like most notable amount of damage around Clio? Termite. So you nailed it. And I think, this is where we also have to educate our customers really vigorously, coming all the way back to the first part of phishing, is if you're termite, you've probably done your due diligence via forgive me, Chip, what's Shodan, right? You probably have a fairly good understanding of what companies out there are running this. And you're probably going to set up Nexus phishing campaigns around this and start attacking those very companies that run this. So it's just this full cycle, if you think about it, of vulnerability to who can patch it quick as but then you're going to have the phishing behind it, right, to continue to exploit. So what are your thoughts on that, Chip? And I see you, Andy. 1 second.
I mean, it's just another example of something we've been talking about all year, how much more sophisticated the business model side of bad actors has become. And the trading in information, the focusing on very specific products, individuals, when you have spear phishing. I was reading another article earlier this week, Andrew, that maybe I'll send it to you for next week's conversation around what are the top concerns for 2025, and prominently in there is the use of AI to further refine phishing and spear phishing and make the impersonation that much more believable. For me, it's about the amount of focus that the black hats are putting into very specific products and industries, and in this case, even timing this time of year, right? Obviously, this is a supply chain, logistics, and shipping. This is the hottest time of the year, from Halloween to New Year's is it really to Christmas. I don't think it's circumstantial that they're focusing on these product lines at this time.
Yeah, and the last thing, and over to you, Andy, is again, if your clients are using file transfer type software, man, I would highly encourage you to have, that is a vCISO conversation. I mean, if you think about Move It to now this and others that have been, hacked or compromised. I mean, this is a target rich area where the threat actors are focusing on getting at it. So Andy, you want to close this out? What do you have?
My question is to Chip and you. I think you're establishing part of the reason I sit here is because I learn about new things, and your suggestion about educating our clientele is very valuable. Curating these examples and helping us create content for this education would be incredibly valuable to me, because I'm not able to see all this coming in and continue to operate my business. But absolutely, if I added this value proposition to my customers as an awareness, or even to prospects, right, I'd be remaining top of mind to them.
Yeah, good point. Well, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. And Chip, I'm kicking myself for the ASVS question after you said it, because there's a guy named Jim Manico who's literally the godfather of OWASP, who I had on the cyber call and many times. So, but that's amazing that you guys follow that framework. Good for you guys. All right. So I know we're at the top. I wish everybody a fantastic week. Awesome seeing y'all. And we'll be back next Thursday. Take care, everyone.
Guys.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye-bye.